Okay guys, great. So next step, we're going to start to blend the two portraits together. So what I want to do is merge my portrait of the top portrait with the bottom portrait. So to do this, I'm going to click on the marquee tool over here on the right hand side to begin with, which is that square, dotted square near the top of the tools palette. Okay, so I'm going to click on that, and then I'm going to select an area just less than halfway across. Okay. And I'm going to make sure now, I'm just going to move over to my layer palette. I'm going to make sure I'm on the layer mask, not on the layer. If we're on the layer and we fill this now, it's going to fill the layer, the image with white paint. We don't want to do that. We want to fill the layer mask with white paint. So the layer mask is just like a tool that sits over the top of the image. It means we can paint on it in black. That will hide the image. So that second portrait we pasted in has completely disappeared. If we paint on it in white, it brings the image out. So I'm now going to swap the colors over from black to white by clicking on that little arrow again, which toggles between the two colors. Click on the paint bucket tool, and then click within this selected area, making sure I'm on the layer mask, not the layer. What we should see now is the two portraits are visible at the same time. So we've got our two portraits visible together. I'm going to click on select at the top and deselect, or you can use Control D. So now both images are visible, but we've got a really sharp line down the middle of them. So what we want to do now to really begin to refine our face merge is blend those two images together. So again, making sure I'm on the layer mask and not on the layer itself. So on the mask, I'm going to paint on it with white paint and a soft paintbrush. So I'm going to find a paintbrush tool. I'm going to click on the options at the top and make sure the hardness is all the way down. It's set at 100%. What you get is a really hard edge to the tool, almost as if you were using a pencil or a pen. We're going to take the hardness down, and that'll give like a much softer blurred edge, which is what we want to create a sort of convincing idea that these two portraits are softly blended together. Okay, if you wish to change your brush size when you're working, you can use the bracket keys. So if you use one bracket key, that'll increase the size, and the other one will decrease it. So I'm just going to use a mid-ish sort of size brush here, and I'm going to start by clicking at the top, and then I'm going to hold Shift key down, move my cursor to the bottom, and click again at the bottom, and that will draw a straight line between those 2 points. So I'm going to click at the top, move it down to the bottom, hovering halfway over that line, holding down Shift, click again. And what you should see now is we've got a softly blended line between the two portraits. Okay, to refine it now a little bit, I'm going to zoom in. I'm just going to alter the portrait, I think, a little bit if I need to. Now with this one currently, we've actually got a really smooth blend between those two pictures. There's a little bit at the bottom here. I'm just going to refine a touch more. So I'm just going to use a bit more white to just get rid of that straight line there. And the same, there's just a little bit here in that hairline. So I'm just going to use a little bit more white paint to sort of softly blend that out a little bit. Okay, I think so far so good. We've got a pretty good face merge. The main problems we've got at the moment are the lips don't quite line up. So the bottom lip on the portrait on the left-hand side is wider than on the right. And the nose is slightly higher up on the left than on the right. So I'm going to show you how to correct that now. Oh, actually, before we move on, when you're merging the two portraits together, if you want to bring the portrait through at any point, you just click on it with white paint. If you want to hide it again, we'd click on with black. So for instance, if I want to get rid of this nose now on the portrait that's on the left, I just click on it with black paint and you can see the other one comes through. If I click on it in white, it goes back and the other one comes back out again. So that's the main advantage, main reason for using a layer mask. We can bring the image backwards and forwards as we want to. And we can use that, of course, just to kind of like finely tune that blend down the middle if we want to. So if I wanted a little more of a one nose, I'd paint on with white and that'll bring through a bit more of that portrait. If I want a bit more of a nose from the right hand side, paint on it with black, and that will kind of bring the other one, that will bring the other one through. Okay, right, that's step 2. So the next step we're going to move on to now is how to just finally adjust portraits or features that don't quite line up, that are a little bit out of sync. Okay, and we'll start that in just one moment. Okay, so to do that next stage then, I'm going to go back to the marquee tool again, and the portrait on the left, this one, where the nose is a little high up. So what I'm going to do is use a marquee tool and select a nice big area around the outside of the nose. You don't want to select it really tight, really close to the nose. So I'm going to start here, select a nice big area all the way around it. It doesn't matter if I get a bit of a lip in. So I want plenty of skin tone all the way around the outside. And I don't just want half a nose. I want to select a good amount of a nose onto the other side as well. The reason for this will become apparent in a second. I've got to make sure when I'm doing this now, I'm not on the layer mask, because I'll just copy an area of black and white. I need to make sure I'm on the layer. And then I'm going to, again, press Control-C for copy, and then Control-V for paste. And what you should see is now we've got a nose that just popped up and appeared as a separate layer here. I'm going to drop the opacity like we did before, so I can see both images at the same time. And then I'm going to click this time on the Move tool, which is that tool at the top left of the tool palette. And I'm just going to move the nose around until I think it lines up a little bit better with the nose we've got on the right hand side of the portrait. So we're just going to drop the height a little bit. Okay, I think that looks about right. And we're just going to repeat the skills we've already used now. So I'm going to reset the opacity on it over here on the right again. So it's back up to 100%. And then I'm going to blend out the image so we can't see where this nose finishes and where the rest of the face starts. To do that, we're just going to add a layer mask again. So we're going to click on that symbol we did before at the bottom of the layer palette, the rectangle with the circle in the middle of it. And then I'm going to use a brush tool again, black to start with. Use my bracket keys to take the size of a brush down again, and I'm going to get rid of that straight line around the outside of the image to begin with. What will happen is, because we've sort of softly blended the portraits together, you won't be able to tell where the skin just blends into the skin of another area of the face. Okay, and there you have it. We've got a softly blended nose that's now in the right place. The last thing to check before we move on is to check that the nose lines up and there's no straight lines in it, which we're going to move on to in 1 second.